This episode is sponsored by Furniture Box. Check them out in the description below.
I would look at my boss and I would ask, does that person make me better?
It's Logan Naidu, the founder of Dartmouth Partners.
Excellence might mean different things to different people.
What exactly is the model?
We've got to know the pool of the next decision makers before anyone else has bothered speaking to them.
I've never been shown the recruitment industry from that perspective.
What's allowed you to be such an effective entrepreneur?
Being less fearful of taking risk is a good thing.
Would you advise someone to open a recruitment agency?
Well, that is a tough question, isn't it? The day before my first wedding anniversary, I got diagnosed with cancer. 2016 had been a hard year. Obviously, I was looking at the business going bust at the start, but quite a lot of turnover, quite a lot of criticism. And then they fired me by text message on December the 23rd.
You got a text 2 days before Christmas telling you lost your job.
There are three big decisions you make in life.
Guys, welcome back to The Ground Floor, the podcast where we ask successful people exactly how they did it. Our guest today is a very special one. It's Logan Naidu, the founder of Dartmouth Partners, a recruitment agency that specializes in financial services. And also Skeeth's old boss.
Oh, boss, exactly.
It's amazing we're still speaking.
It is, I know.
Exactly. I had to break them up before the podcast. How you doing, man?
And another thing I didn't like about working with you.
No, let's stop it there.
The cameras are on. And Logan, how you doing, man?
Yeah, well, I'm really well.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you. It's good to see you again.
Obviously, you and Skeeth know each other and you've got a history, but we've never met before. And so for anyone at home, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and your story?
So I run a multi-group, multi-niche recruitment company. We're a recruitment group now. So it was Dartmouth Partners. We've now got another brand called Pure Search. We'll have a third brand come September, hopefully. And so actually I now run Kernel Global rather than just Dartmouth.
Wow.
But Dartmouth's what I'm kind of known for at the moment.
Yeah, sure. And can you give an idea of sort of what you were doing before Dartmouth, just to kind of provide a bit of a pretense?
Yep, short background. I did 3 years of finance. So I started in corporate finance, was pretty useless at it. So I managed to run through two firms in 3 years. Was actually thinking about full-time Christian ministry. So potentially working for a church that I was part of. And obviously investment banking doesn't naturally give you a lot of free time. So fell into recruitment because back in 2003, a very small firm offered me what was then flexible working, which meant I could leave a little bit earlier on a Thursday, which was pretty unusual, almost 20 years ago. Did a year there. They also let me go after a year. And so I set up my own business in 2005 called the Cornell Partnership. We ran that with two other partners for 8 years. I left that and then started what Dartmouth in 2012.
How did you decide on recruitment then? Straight out of investment banking?
I fell into it. Met a bunch of recruiters, as you do. They pitch you some of the same jobs that you don't want to do. And then one of them, as it happens quite often, doesn't say, you should think about recruitment. You might be quite good at this. And actually what I really liked straight away was the direct correlation between inputs and outputs. For someone who was semi-used to a black box bonus once a year, that idea of exactly what I put in is more or less exactly what I get out was like magic.
Yeah, there is that nice formula with sales where it's definitely, you eat what you kill, whatever's on the table, it's down to you, for sure.
And it's a really dirty word in this country. Right?
Sales.
But
I think it's just globally, it's a dirty word.
I think in America, people love sales.
Okay, right.
Because everyone's selling.
Yeah, that's true.
No, that's true.
That is true. Yeah, that's a good point. In the UK, we have more of a tinge to it. I did sales for years.
Did you?
Yeah, a long time. I did all sorts of stuff. I did like the office stuff and the kind of not amazing places to work and, pretty like intense environments and stuff like that. But, I think it's kind of a rite of passage, I think, especially for business. Like you got to know how to sell,
Everyone's selling. Even I always say dating is selling.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Selling the best version of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So how long were you in recruitment before you decided to set up your own firm?
12 months.
Wow. That's bold.
Or you could say lack of other options.
Fair enough.
Okay, so take us through that. So you've been in the game for like a year and then you're thinking, pretty much like I get the idea.
There was no real plan to set up on my own. As I said, I was really good at it, if I say very modestly, in the first year. And then they fired me by text message.
Oh, really? For text? Wow.
On December the 23rd.
Just before Christmas.
Just before Christmas. But that's basically because the company it doesn't exist anymore. So I think I can say what I want now. But
you got a text 2 days before Christmas telling you lost your job.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't afford to pay my bonus. I mean, the company had been through 2 or 3 pre-pack administrations, so it was running on a nice edge.
Were you kind of expecting to be let go?
Not in that way. And I was expecting to get my bonus, I think it's fair to say. But I didn't think that I had a lot longer left there.
Yeah. I'm with you. So when you set it up, then I mean, what was the plan? Because I'm assuming even when you set up Dartmouth initially, the market was probably still quite saturated at that point with recruitment agencies. So how did you distinguish yourself from the get-go?
No, so that's private joke.
That was such a delayed reaction.
That took me a second. Yeah.
You get it. Okay, so with Cornell was the first business was just another recruitment business. Yeah, there was nothing unique about it. It was born out of necessity, and let's just try and make some money and survive. All right, and so for the first 3 or 4 years, that's exactly what we did. And then actually, as I started to understand the industry a bit more, what you kind of get to realize is that I think there are now currently 40,000 registered UK recruitment companies.
Wow.
Probably back then maybe 30,000. And I use this stat a lot, but I think 80% are sub 10 people in the UK. So it gives you an idea of how easy it is to start one, because small Rolodex and the willingness to pick up the phone, and you can make pretty good money. But it also gives you an idea of how hard it is to scale it properly. And everyone will talk about having an exit at some point. So I think, say 40,000 recruitment companies, 38,000 have an EMI scheme. And I think the stats show of any meaningful exit, there are about 2 every year in the UK. So I think that's 0.005% chance of you actually selling your business.
And for anyone at home, can you explain what an EMI scheme is?
What does it stand for? Enterprise Management Incentive Scheme or something like that. So basically share option scheme for staff. So you get sold the dream a lot in our industry. So having run one business for 8 years, effectively as a lifestyle business where it was, these businesses should generate cash. It gives a pretty healthy living for the founders. But if you're not going to grow the business, and the idea is, the people-based businesses, how do you keep the best people? I think it gets incredibly repetitive for your team. It can get incredibly repetitive for the owners or the MDs. So where do we all go? And so, I was 30, 31, had just gotten married. I'll tell you a little story. I'd gotten married on October the 9th, 2000, let's get this year right, 2012, which is the day before my first wedding anniversary. I got diagnosed with cancer. And my wife was 6 months pregnant. So we were expecting our first child. We were moving house that day, and I got told I had cancer. I had a big lump at the back of my leg, which had been growing quite quickly. And so having had treatment, baby arrived, more treatment. I was in quite a lot of pain at points, high as a kite on morphine. I knew I was not enjoying the old business as much. And part of that was, I'm 32. Where do I go with this? It pays the bills, it pays well, but surely there's more to do in the industry. Surely there's more to life than just making a decent living. And so when I came back from treatment, I was kind of pretty clear that actually, I wanted to do something different, in terms of the breadth of the job, and secondly, understanding the industry. These businesses you can scale, and so I had a managed exit where I was bought out from Cornell, and then Dartmouth started. The starting point to answer your original question: how do we stand out? We came up with this classroom to boardroom idea for Dartmouth, and if you look at it's not just recruitment companies, but most service industries, you have got pockets of excellence, whether it's law firms, accounting firms, particularly in recruitment, you've got pockets of brilliant people where people know that's the best person who does X, whatever it is. And that's the inherent weaknesses in all these businesses till you have proper scale. You've just got 2 or 3 people in a small business that shine, in a larger business might be 20. So I was trying to think of how do you within my sector have a conveyor belt that feeds the brilliance of individuals and allows everyone to flourish together. And so this classroom to boardroom idea was kind of born of the premise that, off campus, talent usually follows the money. Not always, but usually. So, if you go to one of the top 5 or 10 universities, and bear in mind this is 12 years ago, you'd come into the square mile and do probably one of 3 or 4 jobs, which is banking, consulting, private equity, maybe the big 4.
Sure.
And so, what we did at the start was say, look, if we can capture all and get to know all that talent before they're anyone, and we assess them, help get them first jobs, but we've got to know the pool of the next decision makers before anyone else has bothered speaking to them. And the best recruiters do that. They kind of nurture a network and hang on to their coattails as their career progresses. And so, right at the beginning, we focused very early on a pool of talent that no one really cared about, 0 to 6 years experience. What we call graduate recruitment. We run outsourced grad recruitment for a number of firms now, currently about 45 firms, and then helping people get their second and third jobs. And the idea is that if collectively as a group of people we could go up the food chain with that population, our collective black book would become quite powerful. And so 10 years later, we're now working for a group of people who've known us since they were 21. A lot of them are our clients. Quite a lot of them are candidates, and it becomes a little bit interchangeable as you've known them for such a long time. And you become genuine advisors. You know a lot of these people. They've got an affiliation with you, they know you and you know them. So it becomes a proper advisory relationship over time. And that conveyor belt, as we've grown, we're now just under 200 people within Dartmouth. We've got about 20 people in the grad team. I think last year it made about 5 million quid top line. But we will interview. We will pick up off campus globally about 25,000 CVs a year, and we'll interview 8,000 and place maybe 500.
Yeah.
So it's a good P&L of itself, but actually what it's doing is feeding the kind of future business.
Sure.
By getting to those people.
And how? Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say I've never heard of. It's not even a question. I've never heard of someone speak about recruitment with that long-term philosophy and the philosophy of actually nurturing long-term relationships, especially relationships, as you said, then evolve into a kind of symbiotic relationship between client and candidate. I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because I think that's there's not lots of genius to this business. A lot of it is, as James will know, is it's just hard work and hit repeat. But I think the thing that we wanted to really get away from is moving away from the transaction, which gives the industry a bad reputation.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about, because recruitment, it's no secret that recruitment, kind of like estate agent things, there is a reputation that I'm sure you're aware of, and what you just said is completely different to that, and the way that you run your business is completely parallel to that. Do you have any sort of thoughts on why you think the industry is where it is? Because
it's based around transactions all the time, and I guess typically you place someone, you don't need to talk to them for 1 or 2 years. So it is highly transactional. I guess a little bit like a estate agency, where as long as you make the sale, then how likely are they to come back to you in 4 or 5 years' time? And because it's a very peripatetic industry, the chances of me being in the same estate agent or recruitment company are so slim. I think the churn rate in our industry as a whole is about 50%, right? And I think more broadly, maybe 30% in smaller firms. So they're reinventing themselves every 3 years. Yeah. So I think the industry lends itself to being highly transactional. I think the way we generally as an industry train people to think is all about deals. Yeah. And that therefore,
what are you billing this month?
There's a weakness to it.
Yeah.
So I think that by this talking about classroom to boardroom and talking about long-term relationships and knowing they're going to come back to you, and also knowing that the fees, when they're junior, are far smaller than the fees you're likely to make when they're senior. I think it's not perfect, but hardwires a long-term thinking into the business.
So for yours then, sorry, I know you're about to ask a question. I just want to stay on this just for one sec, because I find this really interesting. So for your model then, to avoid that kind of transactionality of it, when you let's say place someone, is it a case where you then sort of periodically check in on them, or you have some sort of structure built around like kind of post placing, or how do you sort of avoid that issue happening at Dartmouth in terms of maintaining that relationship and building that?
So it's easier to stay in touch with the graduate population because they're at the outset of their career, and I guess to be candid, they need you a little bit more, advice around okay, how do I get my first job? How do I dress? What's appropriate? We'll touch base to make sure they're being kind of embedded into the business, and it's a bit more seamless for the first 12-ish months. After that, people have kind of got a grapple of, okay, I've started to learn the system, know what's expected out of me, etc. So, but we'll stay in touch with them with the usual methodology, kind of bonus surveys, catch-ups. Clearly, if we're meeting 8,000 undergraduates a year, we can't stay in touch with all of them. But actually, one of the things that we want to get better at is building out that ecosystem of how do we actually systematically stay in touch with more than just 1,000 a year, because they are the future of the business.
Yeah. And how difficult was it for you to actually get clients to buy into that philosophy from the start? And what sort of objections are you getting?
It is quite difficult to talk about the need of priming the hopper for the future. I think we got really lucky with the timing of the business. So 2012 was, people didn't really talk about startups. We talk about startups all the time, we did this kind of stuff. But 2012 was the sort of slight tipping point, I'd say, when we were talking about Silicon Roundabout, startups became more of a thing. And so that optionality for junior professionals to think about, well, I could go to a Deliveroo, or a well-capitalized startup and earn comparable money to professional services, started to rise on the agenda. And historically before that, if you wanted to work in a startup, you would take a significant pay cut. But well-funded startups brought in competition for that talent. What that therefore brought for us was the chance to, how do we advise professional services to keep them? We talk about Gen Z now and what they want. You're nodding, James. I think you might be a Gen Zer.
Probably. Probably.
But I guess back then was millennials as well, and the kind of slight shift in the workforce and behaviours and what's expected, and people have become a lot more short-termist at the junior end around how they think about their careers. So we were able to become advisors to quite a lot of firms in terms of helping them think, well, how do we manage this workforce or this population of people? We're pretty good at attracting them, and increasingly over the last 10 years, people have found it harder to keep them. To the point where many firms are now thinking, well, if we can have a 2-3 year gig with them, that's a good return on hiring a graduate.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you seen more? It must sort of imply somewhat more of an uptick and a bit of a boost in your industry, given the fact that people are staying at companies less than they used to.
It's a good and a bad, right? I think I talk about, I guess, both as a recruiter and an employer. Stability, or some stability in an organisation, is really, really important. So everyone job hopping all the time is not good. I think culturally, having being less fearful of taking risk is a good thing. We don't have a hardwired entrepreneurial dynamic in the UK as some might argue the US has. We have a greater fear of failure, and failure definitely carries more stigma over here than it does
Very true.
over there. Equally, I do think that reshaping some of the thinking for whether you talk about Gen Zs or millennials, and I've got 3 kids, and their thinking will evolve as they think about work in the future. But we all get older. Our priorities all change as we get older. You do start thinking about putting down roots, no matter who you are. And so I think that helping people think through some of the implications of job hopping a lot in the early days, where I'm just accumulating lots of experience and looking for the thing that might be the most fun or the right thing. It's more than that, isn't it? You are trying to accumulate experience, yes, but I think actually, just having a series of jobs early on isn't always the best thing.
Yeah, and I know the retention at Dartmouth is particularly good, having worked there for a couple of years. So what would be your advice to business owners about them actually, in terms of what they can do to retain their staff?
Look, everyone will talk about culture all day long. Every business will talk about our culture. How many podcasts you've done, everyone will talk about the culture of their business. But it starts with culture, and then actually, what do we mean by this? We've done this exercise recently. We're doing it again. Actually defining what culture means and hardwiring that through the business. And if you take recruitment companies, 40,000 in the UK, my suspicion will be, high 10,000s will talk about partnership and diversity and their people first. What does that actually mean? so we talk about kindness and excellence, but defining, and we're going through this journey now, we would have thought kindness and excellence is pretty self-explanatory, but excellence might mean different things to different people, right? Actually, so hardwiring basic behaviors around, well, this is what excellence means to us. And, the challenge nowadays will be, well, how does that fit around, excellence means going the extra mile or always replying to clients within X amount of time. Well, how does that fit in with my work-life balance? Because, that's also part of the agenda now. And, when I'm off, I don't want to reply to emails at post 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. And so marrying that with, clients and candidates come first, and this is an out of hours job and still is, and you can't really shy away from that. And I still stand by that. Post pandemic, have we become more flexible? Yes, but we work for a super demanding client base. Finance, private equity, they are demanding. They're under pressure themselves. They will work all hours and expect you to do the same. You can't sit there and say, well, actually, it's my work from home day, and I'm going to go and get my hair cut, play around, or golf at 4. I mean, you might be able to do that, but you're expected to respond. And then even things like kindness, which you think are self-explanatory, can mean different things to different people. We're having to now hunker down on that and say, look, it doesn't mean a pass on performance or not giving candid feedback. We captured the radical candor kind of methodology, probably 5-6 years ago. But with a new generation of people in the business, actually understanding that actually part of me being kind is actually helping you be better, and that will require some difficult conversations at points. But the kindness bit is actually being respectful in the way we deliver that, and not, I think radical candor, you can, some people capture that and go, well, I'll just blurt out what I'm thinking. Having a framework for delivering the message faithfully and truthfully, but in a nice way is probably the bit that's kind.
Yeah, sure. I think it's hard to find that balance, especially with people coming in as graduates now. The mentality is so different, as we've talked about with other guests.
Yeah.
It's people are sort of less willing, should we say, to put the work in and actually work hard and do what's expected. There's a sort of certain expectation of whether it's working from home or having more flexibility or just being a little bit sort of fluffier, should we say, on the outside.
Completely true.
We've definitely seen that.
Yeah, and I think, again, I think, I know we all talk about the world changing, but I don't think human beings have changed massively, right? I think that hardwired within us, we want progress, we want to be successful, we want to feel like we're doing something meaningful. That hasn't really changed. Meaningful might mean different things now. Maybe in the 50s or 60s, meaningful might have been provision for my family, right? And putting food on the table. Coming out of a not generationally out of a war era, a ration era, to then saying actually provision means nowadays meaningful might be more around my own personal fulfillment. But that changes pretty quickly, I think, once you stop being so inward looking, right? So I think we are an increasingly inward looking generation. We talk about self-actualization way more than our parents or grandparents. But as soon as you have a responsibility that's outside of yourself, so if you meet someone, right, have a partner, husband, wife, and then have potentially kids, you start to think, well, my meaning's external, right? And so I think that really changes the dynamic. And I think part of the challenge is helping a group of people, who've kind of left school, left the education system, where a lot of it has been around, the narrative is me, and my identity, my ego, and we've lost a wider narrative around society and culture. If you have a faith, how you fit in within, that, for me, the church community, or Jewish society, whatever it is, it's become, wherever in the Western world, much more around my identity is me and who am I, and helping people understand, well, that will change over time because all of us get older. Our priorities do change, and then within the workplace, how do you kind of rewire? Look, our job here is to my thought is to make you good at something and to make you successful, and that's a two-way street. You bring your version of your best every day, and we need to input and train that and help you become successful. And the more successful you become, weirdly, the more enjoyable the job becomes as well. I think that beyond money, that feeling of I'm doing well is way more powerful.
Definitely.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a second to talk about our sponsor for this episode, Furniture Box. Furniture Box is an online furniture retailer that makes awesome products for everywhere from your bedroom to your office. Now, we actually had Monty and Dan, the co-founders, on our show. That's how we met. We loved their story and we hung out with them afterwards, and we knew that we wanted to work with them. And here's the thing. One of the biggest issues I have whenever I've ordered furniture in the past is that certain big name furniture companies, not naming any names, will charge you a fairly large fee for delivery, and even then that delivery usually takes a few days, if not longer. With Furniture Box, not only do they offer free next day delivery, but they're now planning on extending their delivery cutoff even more so that you can literally order a dining set as late as 8 p.m. and be eating dinner on it the next day. So to put it simply, there's no one in the UK furniture scene that's doing anything like what they're doing, and we're thrilled to have them as our sponsor. So click the link in the description and check them out. Now back to the episode. In terms of like the shift in culture and especially in workplace culture, I'm curious to know, what's your opinion on the talk about sort of introducing 4-day work weeks?
Yeah, we're on really dangerous territory here, aren't we? Because we're going to start about culture wars. I was here to talk about business, but
I think because you're in a corporate industry, I'm always fascinated to hear, because we've had this debate quite a few times, and I'm always curious to hear different people's opinions, especially from your kind of world.
Look, I think one of the benefits from the pandemic was that we saw that things can work and you can afford some flexibility. And I obviously was looking at the business going bust at the start, because the first thing that you think when you shut down the world is recruitment's going to stop. So, it was very frightening. One of the very nice things for certainly in the early months was being able to see the kids a bit more. And obviously we had that lovely, lovely spring weather at the same time. So it was super intense, but actually being able to eat with the kids every day was quite nice. And even I enjoyed that. The flip side to where we are today, and we all talked about, we saw this in the kind of the rise of tech stocks and the boom and I guess subsequent fall of them. But we all thought the world's going to stay like this forever. The general trend of human beings is probably kind of levels out. There's a change, but it's probably a lot slower than we perceive. But there is change and progress, and so capturing some of the best things from that. So being able to trust people to do a good job. Bear in mind that adrenaline was pumping. People had the flight or fight coursing through their veins and didn't know what was coming. And there was also no other option, right? So we were all forced to do it. Now running a hybrid blended business wherever you are, I think it is difficult, right? And you're seeing that now where the economy has turned. We all thought we've cracked it for the last 2 years. It's going to be super easy. You even see this with the far bigger FANG stocks where they've just piled in people and now cutting people. So it's encouraging to see even the biggest companies in the world make the same mistakes. I go back to, I think it's our responsibility to help people understand what it takes to be successful. And if I was a junior, and I've said this openly to people in our firm, I would look at my boss and I would ask, does that person make me better? And if that person makes me better, that's probably a boss worth working for, because that's their responsibility to you. And if that boss is demanding and asking you to be in 5 days a week as a 21-year-old to 28-year-old, 29-year-old, I'd probably just do it. Because you've got so little time, right? You've got 10, 15 years to get good at something if you're going to stick at it. And even if you're not going to stick at it, my view is, suck up as much as you can, as quickly as you can to get the reps in. And if you decide it's not for you, you've learned as much as possible, right? And then you can take that to wherever you go next. I think it's as simple as that. And maybe I say that as someone that's maybe, 1 or 2 generations older than the one coming to the workforce today. And so might be a bit old fashioned or naive, but that's the advice I give to my kids.
Yeah, I think it's really good advice. And unfortunately, it's just not necessarily listened to by a lot of people at the moment, but I do think it's really good advice.
I think at heart of hearts, people probably know it's the right thing. Right? It's like, I don't know, it's like a doctor or a friend saying to you, you need to lose a bit of weight, right? And you kind of know that maybe I need to lose a bit of weight, but I like the cake. I love chocolate brownies and I like red wine.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
In that moment, it's quite difficult.
No,
but
definitely.
It is,
Definitely.
yeah. That is. I think the thing that interested me, because we debated it before, but I saw there was a study that was done recently. They did a small study, I believe, at Microsoft a while ago, and the results came back overwhelmingly positive. And then they did another one more recently, where I can't remember which company it was, but they experimented with it was essentially a 32-hour week. I think they didn't have Fridays or something like that, and productivity increased. Not even maintained or decreased, it actually increased. And that's where I found it an interesting, because if people do have more time for their families and their children and their hobbies and the things that bring them joy, and they are also more productive in the time that they are at the office, because we all know, a lot of jobs, there is a lot of downtime where it's like, you have to look busy for the middle manager who's looking over your shoulder, and so in those situations, playing devil's advocate, would the argument be that it makes even more sense if the data's showing that it's more efficient?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think hopefully one of the things that's changed is FaceTime's sort of disappearing, right? Because you can do your job, and devices make that a lot easier. Look, one of the magical things about recruitment, and I think generally sales jobs, is the more you put in and fill up the funnel, the more you can get out.
Yeah, sales is quite specific. Yeah, for sure.
It's it's kind of a zero-sum game. There are obviously
sales you could do 6 days a week if you want, and that's the
and I used to. And I think, so yes, I think there are certain jobs or professions that allow you to be a bit more flexible, because it's just about getting a finite amount of work done. And if you can get it done as quickly as possible, why wouldn't you have a more flexible kind of working week or fluid working week? I think other jobs where the task can be endless, it's slightly different, right? And then I think it's actually about how do you marry up and not burn out your workforce? I think it's a different conversation.
That's true. So just going back then, can you just tell me what the sort of turning point for Dartmouth was? When did you know that you were actually sort of onto something, / when did you start seeing some real success?
Look, we were fortunate that we assembled a team that all knew each other kind of fairly well really early on. So
from Cornell,
actually not all from Cornell. So from Cornell, and then Tim Webster, who's now our COO for Dartmouth, who I'd known for a really long time through church circles, was on gardening leave and then joined us. So we had a core team. I was pretty convinced that I could personally generate money, and for the first 2 or 3 years, we had a really nice kind of fairly explosive growth, and it was very profitable. Success doesn't happen in a straight line. I think it's a Clive Woodward quote. And we hit a bump in 2015, 2016, where we'd basically brought in people under the premise that this isn't a sales job. So we sort of fell into the trap of hiring largely very bright, educated people who didn't want to do sales.
Right. Okay.
And I fed them work and it executed and it worked really well. And that, in conjunction with probably hiring someone senior that wasn't culturally a good fit for the business, caused me and the business a lot of problems. And unpicking that, we did 2 things. We let go of the kind of the individual I'm talking about, and then secondly, we had a group of people that left, not as a result of that, but because we started to try and inject a sales culture into the business, and had quite a lot of pushback on that. But we rehired, and I think we started to find our stride and being much clearer around 2 things. One, what does the job look like? And 2, again, trying to define what does excellence mean? Outside of the core group of 8 people who are largely all still there, helping people understand, this is what good looks like for us. And we talk about, training culture, and how, we were first or second time managers in terms of developing an L&D or formulate L&D platform or system. And so 2015, 16 was a real turning point for the business. 16 was obviously the Brexit vote. Everything shut down in FS for another 6 months while people worked out what happened. But it gave us a chance to hardwire a better sales culture in the business. And I remember end of 2016, I mean, you'll remember this, James, we do 4 big, what we call quarterlies, but big kind of all company addresses. And I hope we're really open about how we're doing, revenue, profit, what's good, what's bad. And 2016 had been a hard year. If you look at our Glassdoor through that period, you'll see there was quite a lot of turnover, quite a lot of criticism. But I felt we were turning a corner. So looking at the data in terms of new clients won that were not from me, for the first time, the majority had not come from me. So people were starting to bring in their own clients. Revenue-wise, we've been flat on the previous year, which was the first time that had happened. In the business, we talk about 30% growth year on year. We were running at sort of 50% top and bottom line growth every year for the first 3 or 4 years. So it's the first time we were flat. Morale was pretty low. I remember the Christmas party being pretty flat affair. But I remember saying to people, look, I think we're turning the corner. And you might not see this yet, but there are green shoots in the business. And then 2017 was an absolute blowout year. And 18, we did our first PE transaction. So
wow,
that was probably the first time outside of the first couple of years where I was like, we're onto something here.
Yeah. Okay.
So for anyone that might be looking to start their own recruitment agency from home or just sort of, from the ground up, what is required in the early stages of that? So in terms of like startup capital, how much do you need?
Depends how many people you want on the first day, right? I mean, you can literally start this with next to no working capital, apart from your own personal needs to live off. I think what stops quite a lot of people doing it is probably, I've been earning really well previously, and I'm not prepared to probably not get back to that stage for maybe 1, maybe 2 years. But outside of a phone and a PC, what else do you need?
Yeah.
So that's exactly it. So for anyone that doesn't know, what exactly is the model? So you're starting your own agency, you have a phone and a PC. If someone doesn't understand how the recruitment model works in that way, how would you go about building that business?
Look, over here, the way the industry works for the uninitiated, if we place a candidate, the employer pays us. And I guess industry wide, we're talking away from kind of blue collar all the way up to white collar. The range for that fee might be anywhere from 10% up to 35% of annual salary. Usually, I'm guessing the industry average is sitting somewhere in the middle, maybe 20-25%.
Yeah.
And so, I guess the first thing you need typically is a client that's willing to use you, and then and a request. Kind of, we need to find person X, and then you just go find that person. I mean, it's literally as simple as just matching initially.
Absolutely.
So it's. I mean, that's the reason there are so many agencies in the UK. Going 40,000.
Yeah.
There's
low barriers to entry, or / no barriers to entry. Right?
There's absolutely no barrier to entry whatsoever.
Yeah.
But in terms of matching that up, so how do you? Let's say you have a client. So James wants to hire someone. He's like, we need this kind of person. Is it a case of you then just go on? I mean, not you obviously for Dartmouth, but if you were starting a new shop, for example, you just kind of go onto LinkedIn and type accountant with this qualification, for example, and then just hit them up and say, hey, I have a job. Are you interested?
Yeah, I mean, and it's in its crudest form. That's exactly right. I think I mean, if you take this as an example, right? Let's say, I don't know how many accountants there are in the country, but if let's say a FTSE 100 firm says we want to hire a newly qualified accountant versus a 10 person firm based in some regional backwater, what they're looking for, what they're willing to pay, what their expectation of that person's career path or the actual role will be very, very different. So where the skill comes in is actually understanding, well, who are you looking for? What can you get for what you're willing to pay? And then who can I find that's willing to do the job? Because for most jobs, there are probably quite a number of people who could actually look like they could do the job. And then the bit that where the alchemy comes in is working out what's going to be right for the business or the team and for the individual. And so you've kind of got two masters really. You've got a candidate, what do they want? What do they like? What's their skill set? What are their aspirations? And you've got a client in terms of this is who I want and can I get that?
Right.
Just again, sort of going back then, I mean, I just wanted to touch on the first PE transaction. You mentioned that that happened. What year was that? The first PE transaction?
June 2018.
2018. How did that come about? And
for anyone at home, PE is private equity.
How did that come about, and what was the what sort of advice would you give to someone who's maybe at that point for a recruitment agency and is looking to get that sort of investment to help sort of accelerate the growth?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, well done if you got to that stage, because it doesn't happen very often in our industry. Look, secondly, we talked about building a business of scale from the very, very beginning. This wasn't going to be what I've done before. It's going to be different. We were going to scale it. And I mean, look, you'll know this, James. We're really open about our aspirations of what we're trying to do. Probably sometimes too open. It creates a great big noose around your neck. But by being really open and saying this is what we're going to do. I talked about having institutional investment from the very beginning. I said I think it might take 10 years, so I bought myself a little bit of time. We did it in 6. The tipping point was probably getting to a certain EBITDA number. So we were right about 2.5 EBITDA.
For EBITDA, for anyone listening, do you mind just explaining what EBITDA is?
Operating profit.
Operating profit. Okay.
Profit pre-tax, but after costs.
Yeah.
And so we got to a stage where we knew we had a business of value. We were still pretty small, about 40-ish people. But taking institutional investment at that point, we didn't necessarily need money, but what it allowed us to do, it gave, I think, it was a real vote of confidence in the business, and me be able to say to 40 people, A, this is what we're worth, and B, this is we're on the journey for growing a bigger business, and someone's willing to back us to do that. And thirdly, most people had skin in the game in the business. So. Again, if I go back to what I said right at the beginning, talking about EMI schemes and every recruitment firm having them, you'd be able to say, actually, there is a value to the business. And look, I've spent my entire working life trying to disprove the notion that recruitment businesses have zero equity value in them. We've done it twice now. But I definitely had members of staff at the beginning saying, look, my equity will be worth nothing. You'll never sell this business because nobody buys them. And me trying to say, look, it will do, it will do, but the odds are against you.
And how did you find your first PE investor? How did you go about actually sort of making that happen?
I was having lunch with an old candidate I placed who worked for a services advisory business, and they did a lot in our space. And I've been to see a few advisors, and a few advisors, well, maybe in 1 or 2 years' time. And his name's Ed. We can't quite get friends, but Ed said, well, I think we can do this now. And I remember thinking, okay, well, let's spend a day together. And they came out with a number. I remember thinking, well, that's quite a large number actually. So
yeah.
So maybe we can explore that. So it came as all these things do from a lunch. But it was part of my thing. I thought we were 1 year too early.
Okay.
But
in an industry, as you said, where there's like 40,000 recruitment firms now, can you speak a little bit to branding and standing out? Because I don't think we necessarily think about recruitment agencies from much of a branding perspective, because they are sort of, a lot of them fairly similar. So what's your kind of thoughts on branding and how to brand yourself in your industry?
Well, that is a tough question, isn't it? Look, I think there are...
That's what we do here at the ground floor, baby. Tough questions.
There are probably 2 parts to that. One is personal branding, and one is corporate. And I think within our industry, probably both play a massive part. There's a personal brand of how do I carry myself? How do I want to be? How do I interact with my clients and my candidates? Who are they interacting with? And I go back to my own career path and what I was thinking right at the outset. Given what you talk about the industry and estate agents, how do you stand out? I used to work with a chap called Piers, who was with us on day one and now works for a social enterprise. But Piers said to me, right, it's a weird industry. If you tell the truth, you're already in the 1% in terms of ethics, aren't you?
That's true.
I said to Piers, you've actually,
sad but true.
You've actually nailed this. And if Piers is listening, hey. And I think that, look, it's because it's got such a low bar to entry, there is a lot of misbehavior. And look, because of my journey into the industry and me thinking about full-time Christian ministry, one of the reasons why I did it in the early years, and it's probably much harder nowadays, is I wanted to meet people, I wanted to become more confident, and I wanted to share my faith. And you probably can't say the latter bit nowadays. But that's where I was. And so a lot of the interactions were probably very, very genuine, and people kind of roughly my age saying, well, why have you left the industry that you're now recruiting in? And I got to tell them a bit about my story. It's not about me, it's about you, but we'll have a conversation. A lot of these people have become quite good friends over the years, because we've all gone on that kind of career journey together, all mid-40s, largely all have kids, largely all getting a bit of a paunch, all the usual stuff. I'd say there's a personal branding to it. How do you want to stand out? And I think part of that is just giving good advice. And we deal with a generally very bright candidate base, usually far brighter than us. They kind of know what they want to do. And so you actually can't sell them to it's very difficult to sell them the wrong job because they're smart individuals. And then corporate branding. Look, our basic thing is build the brand around the people. So if we are consistently excellent in terms of the delivery, consistently give good advice, the brand is built around, well, actually, they all do that, and so you haven't got pockets of brilliance within the business. If I go back to what I originally said, and I think the best, if you think about, what are the best professional services business in the world, people like McKinsey, people like Goldman Sachs, you are buying a brand. Right, you're buying a brand. You're not necessarily buying. Obviously, you've got brilliant people, but that formula of we hire, attract, retain, train the absolute best people. The brand clearly helps do all of that, but the brand started with people many years ago.
Very true, and started with brilliant people, which then causes that chain, which is quite great. This is a question I've been asking a lot of our guests recently, but I am just fascinated by it. What do you think is going to be the impact of AI on your industry?
Ask me in 5 years' time.
If we're here.
Yeah, exactly. We won't be having this conversation. I don't know.
Our computers will be.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think... Okay, look, my suspicion is that at the lower end of the industry where we're just looking for a person. So, jobs that are more blue collar or have a lower, we just need someone, right? I don't know, staffing around an event or I don't know, coffee shops or something like that, where it is we just need someone to do the job rather than we really care about culture. That might be really unfair to the industry, I don't know, but I think AI might take out a lot of that lower level stuff. I don't think it will remove the need for human interaction, because you still need someone to make sure that it's all, so it might be a facilitator, rather like LinkedIn's become a facilitator to finding people. At the kind of higher end, which is where we sit, I think it's quite hard to remove the human element to it, because we go back to the need for alchemy to make it work. And there are so many moving parts around, can they do the job? Well, lots of people can do the job, but who do you want to do the job? I think there's still a lot of intangibles and subjectivity around what makes something work within an organization. And so, look, AI will evolve.
It will. At a rapid pace.
It'll be used. Never say never. Maybe it will be taken out at some point.
Yeah, fingers crossed it's not. Fingers crossed.
But in our lifetime.
Exactly. When did you know you were ready to go international with the business?
Fell into that again. So made the classic mistake. Didn't really have a clear plan. Knew we wanted to do international. International sound, it's all easy, isn't it? We made it work here. Let's just go international. We were interviewing someone who now runs Germany for us, Eleanor. Brilliant interview, really charismatic. Had studied abroad in Germany, although she's a Brit. And we said in an interview, would you ever want to work abroad? So I think I led that. She would say I led it. I would say she led it. But after 2 years, she went to Germany, Frankfurt, and set up our German office. That was the first office we set up. And I think that 5 or 6 years later on, we put a lot more thought into where we go, and actually, probably put a lot more capital into it as well. The thing that I'd say that we didn't do brilliantly, it was the idea of send a biller over, get them to bill, and then get them to hire. Nowadays, we'd like to do that, but we build the infrastructure around that a lot more quickly, and probably have more capital to put on. So, okay, let's build some momentum. It's far easier having 5 or 10 people going out to market than one lone person.
I was going to ask, given your expertise and your experience in the industry, would you advise someone to open a recruitment agency now?
It depends what you want. Right? So, look, I think the industry is a brilliant industry, and I'm going to give my 60-second pitch on why I think the industry is brilliant. There are 3 big decisions you make in life generally that everyone has to make. Right? Who or what do you worship? And everyone worships something or someone. 2, largely, who am I going to marry or spend the rest of my life with? And most people want to do that as they get older. And then 3, what am I going to do with my life? And we have the brilliant opportunity to advise people on the third. And if we've all had parents, right? Know how close we are to our parents, but if you've got a parent that loves their job or hates their job, that really kind of sets the tone for family life quite often as well. So you are get it right, and you're genuinely influential as a positive force for good. Get it wrong, you've probably just ruined someone's family life for a few years, right? It's a real privilege to have these conversations with people, and we shouldn't forget that. So as long as I think starting point of that, then why start an agency? Well, provides a good income. Yeah, it does. So maybe do that. Could it give autonomy? Yes. I think if you're thinking about why people start companies, I don't want a boss, and I want to give it a go myself. Where the failure rate is very high and people get fed up is you've got great salespeople entering, starting up on their own, and it can get incredibly lonely if you don't scale it, don't have enough people. You see a lot of firms yo-yo around the 10 to 20 mark, so it's rinse and repeat. That's exhausting, and it can take you away from what your first love was, which was the sales part of the job. So, I don't think there's a right or wrong in having a 1-person firm, a 20-person firm, or a 300-person firm. Are all different stages of the journey, but just have a real think around why you're doing it, and remember why you're doing it. And look, I think where people get a bit lost is they lose sight of what were their basic principles as to why start one. So why should someone start one? Yeah, absolutely yes, but just have a think about why you're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, the failure rate is so high for new businesses when they're coming, whether it's recruitment or elsewhere. What's allowed you to be such an effective entrepreneur?
I've been fortunate to have assembled a really great team. I think we've got some exceptional people in the business. We've kind of all grown up together to a large extent. We've added some brilliant nascent talent into the business, and I look at the people we work with day in day out internally. We've got really great individuals or high potential individuals at every single level in the business, and I think I look up, and I've always looked for good role models in life. I think that's a really big part of I guess why things like this exist, right? But people who actually can role model what a good life looks to you, and a lot of that is about character, which we don't talk about anymore, but I think character is
a shame,
incredibly important.
Definitely.
Another old-fashioned word, but and how people carry themselves and go about day-to-day life is super important, and I think we've got good characters in the business.
Well, speaking on that, I'd love to get your opinion on hiring and any advice you have for people that are about to start hiring, or hiring people, and how to sort of screen for the right person. What are the kind of things that you look for, and what would you advise on that?
Well, if you're hiring within professional services, call Pure Search or Dartmouth Partners, and we can help you out on that.
Just a little plug.
There you go. I mean, all of it starts. The normal thing: define the job and the role, and then, depending on what you're hiring for, what's going to fit. Again, that cultural piece for the stuff that we recruit for, people really underestimate how important it is. We get so fixated on this is what the job is, and people talk about culture, obviously, and this is what we expect, but what gives us largely flow is people do get it wrong because they haven't hardwired and aren't able to explain in detail this is what our culture actually is. So and being able to define that is actually super important. And then trying to be thorough and cover the market and not rushing and all the usual stuff. Usually hiring is replacement hire or growth hire. They're usually both quite pressing needs, and people become really impatient. And actually getting it right, is probably more important than getting it done.
Yeah. How do you know a business is ready to start hiring for support functions within that particular business?
That's a good question. I'll only talk from my experience within this industry. Again, why don't business in our industry grow? They're very cash generative businesses. You've typically got, let's say, one or two founders that are making decent money, But the idea behind it is it's a cash business, so I can take out a great big dividend every year, and we can run around doing a lot of the ops or infrastructure that distracts from us being great, which was the sales bit largely, and we can spread that as we get bigger around 10 or 20 people. So that infrastructure investments and knowing how to build it out and what to build out is largely lacking because you've been a salesperson all your life. And actually, when I was in a bigger business, let's say, one of the listed ones, you were there, James. It was all done for me. So there's a element of you don't know what you don't know, and then secondly, it requires capital and cash that is going to probably detract from your personal income when you think, well, hold on, that might an ops director or a COO and a marketing person and an L&D person to help me grow the business, it's going to cost me 200 grand on the payroll. That's 200 grand that I could be using for my mortgage, my car, my kids' school fees, etc. So it requires that, again, another leap of faith to go again to reinvest in the business. First time I invested in the business to get it up and going was the opportunity cost of personal income, what I was giving up in terms of salary or whatever. Second time round is then, okay, the opportunity cost of personal income, but I've already taken that risk. And I think a lot of people in our industry get basically vertigo. I'm kind of there. It's going well. Why do I risk it all again?
Yeah, I'm with you. Just on that point then, in terms of reinvesting in the business, how do you know how much to reinvest and how much to withdraw in terms of income? Curious to take your perspective on that.
That's a great question. Look, I honestly don't think it's a right or wrong answer. If you go back to why we started the business, some people will want to run it as a cash business because personal income is really, really important to me. I don't want to scale it. I want this to provide a really great lifestyle. I can come and go as I please, etc. I play tennis with one of my best friends every week. He runs a one-man band, and he'll say, "Look, I've got autonomy. I can do my kid drop off at school every day when they were younger. I can go to the gym for an hour and a half every day. I've got.
It's a lifestyle business more or so.
But he does really well out of it. He does really, really well out of it. He picks me up in his Bentley every Sunday to go and play tennis. So he does. And that's exactly what he wants. And he would always say, your stress. You have no time to even go to the loo. Right, so if I call you, I know exactly where you are because of the echo, and so people have different reasons, and I don't think just because I've done it one way isn't the right way. It was what I wanted, and for my mate, he would say that's exactly what I don't want.
True. No, that's true. I didn't know if there was a kind of a blanket rule, if you like, of you should never take more than X out of the business percentage relative to turnover or profit, or
no. I think that the gold rule for me is that you should drop out roughly 30% margin, right? So you should be running at a 30% profit margin. If you aren't, you've probably got something wrong. And again, a lot of business owners get that wrong. And then secondly, take out what you need, and if you want to grow it, reinvest it. If you don't want to grow it, then rip it all out and start again.
Again.
Go on. You
well, I was gonna do our big question.
Go for it.
Yeah. We like to round off every interview with the same question, essentially.
Okay.
Which is where we basically ask, if you were to give one piece of practical advice to someone at home that's watching, who might either already have a business or be looking to start one, what would you say? And we put emphasis on practical and actionable, so less kind of believe in yourself, work hard, and more down the route of like something they can actually maybe take home and apply to the business they may or may not already have.
Well, I wish you told me that before.
We like to keep
people on the spot.
Spontaneous.
That is a super hard question.
Because also we don't want people to come in and be like, well, the one thing you need, and it's like, however big or small, there's no pressure.
All right, let's make it relevant to what I do. I think building the right team and getting the foundations right at the beginning will set the tone for the course of your business. So you can obviously unpick it if you get it wrong, but having if you've set it up by yourself, having the first 3, 4, 5 hires around you that have drunk your Kool-Aid, buy into what you're going to do, and are going to back you, come rain or shine. I think will probably dictate a large chance of your success. Team makes such a difference.
Hugely.
That's a really good piece of advice. Yeah,
It really is.
But no, look, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
pleasure.
I have a huge amount of admiration for what you've done with Dartmouth, and genuinely do look up to you as a really successful entrepreneur. So
That's very kind.
thank you.
Yeah,
Nobody looks up to me given my height. So that's very nice.
It's a nice full circle interview, and it has been an amazing conversation. And I've been enlightened about. I've never been shown the recruitment industry from that perspective, and I have a great deal of respect for everything you've talked about. It's really interesting.
It's force for good.
No, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
What, physically or?
No.
Yeah, your home address, please.
Home address, mobile number, email, kids' schools, everything. Where can people find you in Dartmouth and anything you want to promote, basically, this year?
Have a look at dartmouthpartners.com or puresearch.com or kernel-global.com.
Amazing. Logan Naidu, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Guys, remember to subscribe, turn on post notifications for anyone at home. And if you are listening on the audio, then please do rate us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and leave a review. And we will see you in the next one. Take care.
Thank you.